Critical moments. This album was released just 10 months after the debut. I think that's crazy. I think it's
That's
crazy that
insane.
a band had an album come out and 10 months later they have a second album come out. And um,
Talking to you,
it
Guns
was
N' Roses.
right. Uh, so I think it was very critical that it was recorded at the Village in Los Angeles because that was a weird move relocating Kiss from New York um, to record
Yeah.
in LA because Kerner and Wise had moved from New York to LA. And I think it was a critical misstep period to work with Kerner and Wise again after the first album. I think they should have went back to Kramer. Um, the band didn't like LA. Paul stated that he didn't like LA, and Paul's guitar was stolen while they were in LA. And this album was supposed to be named "The Harder They Come," and I think it was very critical that they did not name the album that. I don't think that would have been very good. And um, I think it's critical that the album's overall content is and subject matter is darker than the first album. This was the dangerous Kiss era. You know, when they had the poster of the girl with the blood all over her and they basically stripped her down naked and she's naked in the poster. And um, this is them before all the fame and the money. And the band was extremely hardcore during this time. I think that was very critical. Um, I think it's critical that the band had gained experience on the road from February 74 to August, 6 months. I think it helped with their performances on this album. And I got two more criticals. I think it was critical that Ace had two songs on this album that he wrote, um, and the co-write on Coming Home. He wrote Parasite and Strange Ways, and they're two of the heavier songs on the album.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's critical that this album was less accepted than the band's first album and sold less than the first album initially. We all know the story without getting into it that they pulled the band off the road after 6 months and they spent 2 months recording this album because they weren't really picking up any steam, airplay or anything like that with the first album. The first album kind of already petered out, and they ended up putting out an album that was even less receptive and charted even less than the first album. Um, so what do you guys have anything? What you think is critical about the album, the era of this time?
AJ?
Um, I mean, no, not. I mean, this album was like a later one for me. There was a core group of albums I had as a kid, and this came in later, so I really didn't know a lot from it. I obviously knew a lot from Alive, but I didn't know like what album the songs were from. So yeah, it's actually my favorite album to be honest with you. I always call it the Black Sabbath Kiss, you know, and I really don't have a lot to say about it because I didn't really grow up with it until I didn't find out I was later on in life. So, but it became one of my favorites and my actual favorite. So I love it.
That's critical. I think that's pretty critical. That's a critical moment considering it's your favorite of the whole catalog.
Yeah, it took a while, but I got there.
Yeah. I actually got this one through Columbia House. That was how I got it originally. Get whatever for a penny or whatever. And then you start getting, I remember the first thing they sent to me as like, you have to either keep it and pay for it or send it back was Eric Clapton. And I was like, well, I like Clapton, so I'll just keep it. And then I had to give my mom the money to like pay for it because I didn't have a bank account or anything. I pretended to be 18. But I remember getting it and just like, because I'd only seen it in like magazines and stuff. Like, I mean, I heard the songs, but I didn't have the album. And I just remember seeing the cover and it was so different compared to everything else. And I know we'll talk about the cover as well, but it was just so different compared to everything else. And I was like, I have all of these songs or almost all these songs in one way or another, but I don't have them in this order. And I think that's where a lot of like Kiss fandom comes in. Like any way you can get it like different, it makes that like the greatest hits and stuff. So to me, I mean, I love the stories about the day of the photo shoot and stuff, how Paul got drunk and they had to lock him in the car so he wouldn't hurt himself and all that stuff. And then around this time, you know, Ace is already wrapping his car around telephone poles and stuff. Like, I mean, and like on the thumbnail of this video, I have the picture of Ace with half of his face painted. And I just think stories like that is just like kind of like what makes the lore of this band so much bigger than even the band actually is.
And wasn't this the album where Peter wanted a 10-minute drum solo?
Yep.
And he said if he didn't get it, I'm quitting the band. So they let him record it and just kind of like, you know, it's not going to fit on the like right away. You're already being a dick, dude. Like,
They let him record it, and then they cut it after he left the studio.
Yeah, right, right.
Good old Gene and Paul.
That was a critical move.
Yeah. But I agree with that move because come on, dude, your first album sold.
It's a studio album,
right? It's not live. We're not all high or drunk or whatever. That I mean, it's like. And you're not even an established drummer at this point. This is you're the dude, you're the cat dude in Kiss. So it's like, dude, come on, man. It's like you're already sabotaging.
I mean, I love he got his drum solo. He eventually got his drum solo on a live album where it belongs.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh man. But that was
kind of like in February.
I think it's very critical that during this time the band, it was like they were still very raw. They were still very hungry. I think even more so than when they started. I think that, you know, 6 months to a year in now, the newness of being in a band that is struggling to make it, the excitement and the newness is starting to wear off and the hunger is starting to kick in. I think that they said that they made like $50 a week during this time. And they basically lived off bologna sandwiches or something like that. And so you look at this album and you look at the cover, and we'll talk about that and everything later, but the sound of the album, and I always associate this album with like Halloween, spooky. This is a very fall, spooky, Halloween-ish album. And it's what a lot of fans consider the Black Sabbath album of Kiss, the heavy metal album of Kiss. Because once they hit Alive, that's when the commercialism took over, and that's when they were just going to do whatever they could to do to appease the largest possible audience. But this, like I said, this era, man, they were just so dangerous, and photos with, you know, holding knives to women's necks and stripping them naked with blood running down them and stuff, and their hands all over them and naked. Naked. So it's just naked. It ain't naked, it's naked.
Naked. NEKKID.
Naked. NAKKED. So yeah, it was a good time for the band, and they recorded this album, then boop, right back out on the road for a short, almost a same amount of time, 6 months before they get pulled again to do the next album that we'll talk about in the next video.